Hey guys, Professor Griffin, Python Crash Course, Lesson 16. Dear Lord, I am tired. But we're going to talk about some functions. Alright, here's a little snippet I have from the last little mini tutorial that I posted. I did change a little bit. We were working out of a file called file read. I was trying to keep things together, but I wanted to change things up a little bit, so I pulled PyIntro 16 out of that folder. That's right here. Just to show you that, the path doesn't always have to mean you're going to read a file directly from the folder that you're in. It can be from anywhere on your hard drive. So file path is equal to this. And then if we run this right now, we're going to open up that file. We're checking to make sure it actually is a file path using the OS library. Open it, read it as a single string into a data variable, and we print it out. Holy schmoly. Alright, there's our JSON. You guys think I'm drunk. I'm really just tired. And that's alright. We'll play the drunk card. And I'll put funny memes on the videos like I did last time and just roll with it. Alright, so I need to create a function to read my JSON file. I don't need to, but I'm going to use this as my example. Functions in Python are a little different than C++. C++ wants you to have like a return type, an int, then a function name, param list, and then a code block, and then a return, all that. Alright, Python's almost the same, but it's the same keyword to define a function for everything along with your function name. Parameter list, code block. So if I indent all of this, everything indented below this code block is now part of this function. Alright, let's call this read JSON. Well, if we're going to read JSON, I'm going to need you to pass in a file path. And since this is kind of hard-coded, I'll pull it out, put it back in global scope, outdent it, and then run on with life. Okay, so this is defined in global scope. We don't have like a main function. I'm going to talk about stuff like that in a little while. But for now, we'll leave this up here. We'll still pass it in when we call the function, but we have function definition, function name, parameter list. Notice there's no data types. It just wants something to come in, and then immediately it's going to check to see if that file path that you pass in is valid, and when you pass in file path, it turns into local scope. So let's change the variable name to make it different. Local path. Local path, local path. Alright. And not all functions need them, but of course if we're going to open a file, read it, we're going to convert it to JSON. Let's do that. So we're going to say JData is equal to JSON.loads data, and then return JData. So down here I can say my JSON data is equal to read JSON with the file path. So and print my JSON data. So this underlined stuff is because my stupid IDE Shift Command P disable spell checking. Yeah, who spell checks their code? I guess I do. Alright, there we got it. Let's use some pretty print action. pp.prettyprint. Alright, there's our JSON that we passed in. However, and not a huge deal, but we did check to make sure it's a valid file path. But what if it's not valid JSON? For example, let's say I go over to player data and I jack it up and I save it. Then I come back and I run that thing again. It just crashes. So we need to, let me show you a little bit of exception handling. We need to handle that. So let me go back to player data, Command Z, save it, come back to the file. So let's add another function called valid JSON. Okay, same thing. Define function name, parameter list. You can have default parameters. We'll talk about a little bit that later. But it's the same idea. We're going to open. I had some stuff cut and paste. So we're going to open JPath for reading. We're going to try to read it in. So wait a minute. Valid JSON, JSON path. Wait, we've already opened the file. So we don't really need to open the file and read the data. That's done. So we don't need to do that. What we need to do is we need to try and see if the stuff that we passed in, the actual JSON data, is valid. So what we're going to try to do is use a try catch block. So we're going to say JSON object or JData is equal to JSON.loads JData. Okay. So if this works, all we got to do is simply return true. Thanks IDE, don't need it. Except value error. There's so many different types of errors, we can't get into all of them. As error, I'm just going to put a pass here, because if it makes it down into this next block, I'm going to return false no matter what. So what this does is you pass it in a file that you read, and it'll try to load the JSON. Because if it's not valid JSON and you don't try to handle it, it just crashes your program. What this does is at least handles it and gives you a true or false. So what we could do is say, instead of saying JSON data is JSON loads, we could say if valid JSON data code block, then we go ahead and load it ourselves. Is it a little wasteful? Maybe, but it's a lot safer. So this says read JSON with a path. We already checked to make sure it's a file. If it is a file, we open it for reading. We read the data in because it's valid. Then we check to see if it's valid JSON. Take that JSON data and load it up. And if this is not false, if JData, we're going to say return JData. And if it's an else, we can return a big fat false. Or sometimes it's nicer just to return none. None is the null pointer in Python, and you can test for none back down in your main program, as I'm air quoting double quotes for main. And maybe if it makes it pass, if it doesn't make it into any of these to return the actual good code, we'll just say return none as a catch-all. So my JSON data is equal to read JSON with my file path, and we'll print it out. Boom, there we go. Alright, well, let's go mess it up again. Player data, let's just take off the last curly brace so it's not valid. Run that bad boy again, and it returns none. And we can test for that. So I could say if my JSON data printed out, else, we don't need pretty print, Oops. Man, golden. And I'm only a half a bottle of bourbon in. Love it. See y'all in a minute. Later.